Oh, hello, and welcome into Candlestick Chronicles, a 49ers podcast on the Blue Wire Podcast Network. I'm Kyle Madson. I write about the 49ers over at NinersWire.com, part of the USA Today Sports Media Group, and Chris Biderman's laughing at me. What's funny?
No, it's I'm always taken aback when you change up your intro a little bit.
Oh,
I think it caught you by
okay.
surprise that we were live on streaming on our YouTube channel, as well
No,
as Lily is. I don't know if you can hear the dog barking,
yeah,
but
Lily's fired up. She's fired up about it. Thank you, Lily. I appreciate you appreciating my change. No, I was trying to do the like, oh, hey, didn't see you there. Welcome into Candlestick Chronicles. So this is a podcast where we talk about the 49ers, and we're going to talk about Brandon Aiyuk saying the 49ers don't want him anymore. But before we do that, Chris, tell us about the homies over at Lamb Chops.
I would say the Lamb Chop clothing apparel is my podcasting uniform. Given I'm basically wearing sweatshorts or pants or mesh shorts around the house, basically at all times. But I would say it's my life uniform. Really,
Oh,
like at all times, you can usually find me in Lamb Chops. Super comfortable, super high quality. Some conversation starters with the animal print shorts for sure. Really enjoy those, and really enjoy everything from Lamb Chops. My closet's full. We have another package coming in the mail. Shout out
yeah,
to our
rumor
homie
has it.
Greg. And the highlight of that is our better halves are getting some Lamb Chops gear too. A reminder that a lot of, if not all of their gear is unisex.
Mm-hmm.
So you can outfit the women in your life. So shout out to Lamb Chops. Head to sglambchops.com. Promo code Candlestick20 to save 20% on your first order. And we appreciate them. We rock with them, and couldn't be happier to be partnered with them going forward.
The official uniform of Candlestick Chronicles?
We could say that.
Okay.
I don't hate that.
Okay. I feel good about that. We're also sponsored by Prize Picks. I had Prize Picks on its daily fantasy sports, and it's my favorite thing about watching sports now. I had an entry for Game 5 of the NBA Finals, which the Celtics cruised to a victory over the Dallas Mavericks. Oh, big winner. My entry had Jaylen Brown, more than 18.5 points. The NBA Finals MVP had 21 points. I had Josh Green, less than half a three-pointer made. He went 4 for 4 from beyond the arc. That's fine. And then PJ Washington, I had less than half a dunk. He did not have a dunk. Ergo, I did a flex play, which means you can get 2 out of 3 and still win a little bit of cash. So I was a big winner tonight, along with the Boston Celtics, and you can be a winner too. Prize Picks is super easy. You pick 2 to 6 players, you pick more or less on their stat projections, and then you watch the winnings roll in. Pick a sport, pick a game. They very likely have squares for it where you can include them in your entry. They do really fun combo entries or combo squares during like the NFL season, an NBA crossover season where you can have like Travis Kelce and LeBron James combined catches and made threes for an entry. It's a ton of fun, and Chris and I have a blast doing it, and we know you will too. So head to prizepicks.com/candlestick. Use promo code candlestick for a first deposit match up to $100. That is prizepicks.com/candlestick. Promo code candlestick for a first deposit match up to $100. The 49ers don't want Brandon Aiyuk anymore? Let's talk about it. Dude, it's frustrating because if you missed it, Brandon Aiyuk put out a video that we'll play here shortly saying that the 49ers don't want him anymore. He told this to Jaden Daniels, his former teammate at Arizona State, who then went on to win a Heisman at LSU and then was the number 2 overall pick in this year's draft to the Washington Commanders. We'll play the video here and then react to it. So here is the video if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening, you'll hear the audio. This is Brandon Aiyuk talking to Jaden Daniels on FaceTime. I hope you guys could hear it. I could not.
It's
So
making
fingers
its
crossed.
rounds on the internet. If you haven't seen it,
Fingers crossed.
I can edit that portion out in post production if that was not
Perfect.
heard.
I don't think it was.
Okay.
That's fine.
Let us know in the comments if you heard it or
Yeah,
not.
no, Ben Wood is already all over it. There was
No
no
sound.
sound. That's fine.
Okay.
So Brandon Aiyuk told Jaden Daniels they don't want me anymore.
So
Go
it's
ahead.
not entirely clear that he's talking about the Niners. That's
That's
the
it.
assumption.
Sure. We're going to
but
assume for the
anyway.
sake of this podcast that he was.
I think that's fair. That's what he wants. That's what he wants out there. Brandon Aiyuk
Right.
is playing the game.
Right. It's just I don't know. We have to react to it, right? Like this is the deal. If you're a 49ers fan, especially if you're a football fan with a life who checks out during this time of year, and all of a sudden you see a video of Brandon Aiyuk saying they don't want me anymore, like yeah, that's gonna cause panic. So if you're panicking, welcome to Chris and Kyle's conversation where we're gonna help back you off the ledge a little bit. This doesn't move me, bro, at all. I am unmoved by this. He hasn't even deleted his photos from Instagram yet.
So look,
go ahead.
this is, we said it early on this offseason that there was going to be stuff that happens that makes this seem really tenuous.
Mm-hmm.
And what I think Brandon Aiyuk is doing here is playing a card in his hand, which is to create a social media stir, which is what players in these contract situations can do. It's a leverage grab. It's a public perception grab. It's an opportunity for them to create conversation about themselves. And, obviously we are participating in that, right? And honestly, shout out to Brandon Aiyuk for giving us content in the slowest portion.
We had nothing, dog.
In the slowest portion. I don't know how much we could have talked about Christian McCaffrey being on the cover of Madden. But
he sure is, Chris.
But no, so here's my thinking. I think Brandon Aiyuk is, if I were to guess, and I don't know this for sure, I think Brandon Aiyuk is just trolling, because I think Brandon Aiyuk you could tell by the look on his face in the video, he doesn't seem overly distraught about this. He's kind of smiling. And also, I find it incredibly hard to believe that the 49ers would actually tell Brandon Aiyuk, we don't want you. Right. There might be a snag in the contract negotiations, and the Niners might have hung up and said, all right, we'll talk next week. Or, when you come down off this number, then give us a call back or whatever. Right. And that's all part of negotiations. And again, this is just me speculating. But if you're Brandon Aiyuk, you can say the team said this and the team said that. We won't actually ever know for sure what was said, because that's just not how this works. I can say pretty confidently, Deebo Samuel, when he was looking for a new contract after the 2021 season, he was saying a lot worse things to people that he was encountering in real life, right? Like I've heard a lot of things that Deebo Samuel was saying, and it was a lot more inflammatory than if what I heard is true, which I do believe it to be true. It was a lot more inflammatory than what Brandon Aiyuk just put out on TikTok, right? So, and then ultimately Deebo Samuel comes to a contract extension. It was a little bit messy. The Deebo Samuel stuff was a little bit messy. The George Kittle stuff was a little bit messy. It all got done in and around training camp. Nick Bosa, obviously, it was prolonged. It was a really big, complicated contract that took into September. He showed up a week before the season opener against the Steelers. I just think this is one of those predictable twists and turns that these things are going to take, particularly in the slow portion of the season, when if you're a player and you want to change the conversation, you have the opportunity to do that by just sending out a video on TikTok. So that's where I think this is going. I still think it's going to get done. I think all of the discussion is just kind of part of it. I think Niner fans should be used to this stuff at this point, given the way the team has been able to get a bunch of these big deals done. They haven't really had a stalemate that's led to somebody getting traded, right? Like they released Eric Armstead, but that's pretty standard practice in the NFL these days. If there's an aged player or an aging player who's missed a bunch of time with injury, who's due a big number, A lot of times that guy ends up free on the open market in the spring because teams don't want to pay him. And that's just a part of the business, right?
Right.
The DeForest Buckner thing, I think, is completely different than this. It was just the 49ers looked at it like, we could trade DeForest Buckner and basically, bring back Eric Armstead, bring back Jimmy Ward, and get a first-round pick. That's 3 starting spots that they thought they could fill by trading DeForest Buckner. Ultimately, Javon Kinlaw didn't work out, but I still don't think it was an absolutely dreadful decision by them, right? Although, if they would have known that they would have been paying Brock Purdy less than $1 million a year, then maybe they would have kept DeForest Buckner. But obviously, hindsight's 2020.
Right.
So I just think this is a very predictable social media type thing to happen in a situation like this. And it doesn't change my opinion on whether or not I think the 49ers are going to get a deal with Brandon Aiyuk done. I think it's going to happen at some point, and it's probably going to happen in late July or August. Yeah. And we'll look back on this, and then something similar will happen next year when Brock Purdy's doing a new deal. And, we'll see.
So this is, look, here's, and Ian Rappaport reported this on, I don't want to say reported, it said this on NFL Network, that it's not that the 49ers don't want Brandon Aiyuk, it's that they don't want him at his price. And Rappaport's wording was essentially like, yeah, negotiations aren't dead. This is still going. There's no deal yet. But go back, and I wrote about this at Niners Wire. Like, go back and look. It's every Fred Warner contract, late July. Deebo Samuel contract, late July. George Kittle was early August, because that was a weird year with training camp at the preseason because of the pandemic. And then Nick Bosa was obviously like September 2nd or 3rd. So this is just how this goes, man. And look, this wasn't Brandon Aiyuk caught on a hot mic complaining to somebody, or this was a deliberately filmed. A person they weren't hiding, like they were filming him doing this, and then he consciously was being filmed, said that with no context, and then posted it on TikTok. Like, this was the intended consequence was collectively 49ers fans freaking out. And that's why players do this. That's why Klay Thompson wiped the Warriors from his social media. It's why Deebo Samuel did it during his contract negotiations with the 49ers. It's why Kyler Murray did it during his contract negotiations with the Cardinals. And I'm sure there are more examples. But 3 is enough to drive the point home. It's their one, you said it. It's the card in his hand that he can play is create some social media fervor to maybe push the team in his direction a little bit further. But I'm sticking with my original thought that the 49ers knew when they didn't trade him in this year's draft, that they knew that, yeah, you know what, this is probably going to get up into the $30 million range. When you look at Devontae Smith and you look at Justin Jefferson and Amon-Ra St. Brown, like, they're not dumb. The Niners front office did not go, hey, we're going to be able to sit around and pay him like $23 million a year. Oh, wait, he's going to want 30? Oh, no, panic time. Like, that's not what's happening here. They're just hoping that, yeah, hey, you know what? The price is a little high right now. We're hoping he can come down, and here's where we're comfortable, and we'll come up a little bit. And negotiation happens early on in training camp, or by the time training camp starts. Like, that's just how this thing goes, man.
John
Lynch hasn't even requested a trade yet.
No, that we know of, anyway. But
yeah, publicly,
I don't think he has. But one thing that John Lynch always says when it comes to this contract stuff is deadline spur action.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're the 49ers and you don't like where Brandon Aiyuk's number is on June 17th,
mm-hmm.
then you basically have 5-6 weeks to wait until that deadline, and then you could revisit the talks.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's no benefit to getting Brandon Aiyuk's deal done in late June as opposed to the start of training camp, right? Like, they're
mm-hmm.
just like he's not even allowed in the building until late July when rookies and veterans report. So the 49ers can say, all right, you're at 29 million. We're going to sit at 28 million a year, just as an example.
Mm-hmm.
And we can wait it out a month because it really doesn't matter, because whether we do it June 17th or July 17th does not matter. So we can sit here and wait. Mm-hmm. And my guess would be something like that happened. And Brandon Aiyuk said, all right, I'm a little annoyed at the conversation that my agent just had. His agent, by the way, I think is John Lynch's agent also, which is an interesting wrinkle to all this.
It's weird.
But I think there's a chance that Brandon Aiyuk the team said, we'll wait this out. And Brandon Aiyuk was a little annoyed and then posted a video on TikTok.
Yeah.
Like that's my read on the situation. And look, like one thing I don't think we've talked about a whole lot. Brandon Aiyuk's a really good player.
Very good.
He's the Niners' leading receiver the last 2 years. I think he's a better pure receiver than Deebo Samuel.
Yeah.
But Deebo Samuel is a unique player in that,
right.
You can argue who has more value. I think when it comes to pure route running, receiving,
yes, it's
pass
not close.
catching,
it's not close.
Yeah, Brandon Aiyuk is better than Deebo Samuel, but Deebo's just so unique with the ball in his hands.
7th in the NFL in yards last year, despite being 36th in targets.
Hyper efficient, right?
Crazy.
Here's the thing, though. The Niners do have quite a bit of leverage in this situation. Because since the new CBA was signed, it's super penal for a player to hold out. There's no way Brandon Aiyuk is just going to sit out the season, right? Like Le'Veon Bell did that, and that was a disaster for his career.
Mm-hmm.
The 49ers used a first-round pick on Ricky Pearsall, who it sounds like they're pretty high on, and it sounds like has been performing pretty well, at least during the offseason program. And certainly they wouldn't be terribly upset if Brandon Aiyuk, for whatever reason, wasn't there and they gave Ricky Pearsall all these reps to develop, because he's going to be part of the long-term future anyway. And this is a team, even without Brandon Aiyuk, you could argue has one of the best groups of skill position guys in the entire NFL. With Brandon Aiyuk, I think it's pretty clear that they do have the best group of skill position guys in the league. Without him, you can make a case it's still one of the 3 to 5 best. So, and the 49ers can give him the franchise tag.
Mm-hmm.
So I fully understand why the 49ers would draw a pretty hard line here, particularly knowing that they have to pay Brock Purdy next offseason something like $50 million a year. So for the Niners to draw a line in the sand and say, hey, it's June, like we can wait you out. Like that wouldn't surprise me at all. And it also wouldn't surprise me at all if Brandon Aiyuk's reaction to that is to get a little pissed off and then to take to social media and get his own messaging out there.
I'd be pissed too, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, that's just how negotiations work.
Yeah.
And I think the other part, like, fans will get like, oh, what's the difference between 28 and, 27 million a year? It's like, that's a lot of money. It's worth holding out a month for $1 million over, $4 million over the life of a contract. That's a lot of money. And if you're an agent and you're getting 4% of that, that's a lot of cash, and it's worth it for you to just hold your line for another month too.
Yeah, and dude, look, here's I have a couple of things just to expand on your point here. Ben Wood in our YouTube chat said, "Is there not something to be said for the Niners sitting idle and letting all these other wide receivers continue to set the market with their deals? His price is not getting any less." No, I think they do that because now they know, okay, hey, there's this stealing with Justin Jefferson. And we know he's comparable to these players and these contracts, so here's a fair contract. I don't think Brandon Aiyuk, had they offered him a contract before the draft at like, hey, here's $22 million a year, like he wouldn't have taken it. So, I mean, they could offer him something now, but look, they're not even in the building. The only reason there is to give him a contract now is to just ease anxiety of fans. There's zero reason on the 49ers behalf to not wait. To come up to his price or whatever he wants. I mean, Chris, you just said it. The ball is in their court. Brandon Aiyuk is under contract. And if he doesn't play this year, then he doesn't accrue the season. And next offseason, he is right back there on his 5th year. He's in the exact same spot without he lost a year in age without accruing an NFL season. Like, that's brutal. And he didn't get paid. Yeah. So
if he plays, I can tag him next year too.
Yeah, man. There's no reason for the 49ers. Like, could they theoretically give him a contract right now and just say, hey, we're just done with this? Yeah, but there's no reason to.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those watching on YouTube, I have the wide receiver contracts up. Look, he's not as good as Justin Jefferson. He's not going to get $35 million a year. I think you can make a case he's not as accomplished as A.J. Brown, who makes $32 million a year. I think the Amon-Ra St. Brown, the $30 million is puffed up a little bit by the way that deal is presented. I think, I think it's more you read up on that deal and it sounds more like a 24 to $26 million a year deal.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't surprise me if the 49ers are like, hey, we're offering you 26. And Brandon Aiyuk's like, I want 28, 29. Like that wouldn't surprise me at all. And then I think what's going to end up happening is there's going to be a situation where the 49ers come to an agreement at some point and they meet in the middle. And that's more likely to happen in July than it is in June. Because again, there's no impetus to get this deal done in June. I think one thing I hear, and I don't love to do the thing where we talk about, people's takes and talk about how dumb they are. But seeing this idea that the 49ers are waiting around and it's a sign that they don't want Brandon Aiyuk or that all this is bad. It's like you went through it earlier. Like, look at the history. All of these big deals that they do with their veteran players get done in July and August. And John Lynch, the entire time through all of it, is always saying deadlines per action. There's no deadline in late June. Nope. Absolutely zero deadline in late June. Nope. Now, if this bleeds into training camp, then it gets more problematic. But even in the instance where they did have a big protracted holdout situation with Nick Bosa, they got the deal done. So look, there's a lot of money on the line. You have high-level negotiators on both sides who get paid a ton of money to do what they do, who are really good at what they do, and that's just how this goes. And I'm a full believer that deadlines do spur action. And if this bleeds into late August and we're at the third preseason game and Brandon Aiyuk's not there, then it's like, all right, this seems pretty problematic. But if the 49ers were going to trade Brandon Aiyuk, to your point, they would have done it during the draft. This is one of the most talented rosters in the NFL coming off a trip to the Super Bowl. They think they can win a championship this year, and their chances of winning a championship without Brandon Aiyuk decrease pretty substantially.
Yeah. That's if they don't get a deal done. In fact, again, I wrote about this in Niners Wire. But if let's just say they reach an impasse and Brandon Ayuk's like, I want Justin Jefferson money. I want to reset the wide receiver market. And the 49ers are just like, no, I don't think that's what's happening, by the way, but let's just go there for a minute. Follow me.
Right.
And he says, I want to reset the market. And the Niners are like, we're not doing that. That is above the market value here. That's crazy. We're not doing that. He plays. They wouldn't then trade him. John Lynch said it at the owners' meetings. They're comfortable with him playing on his fifth-year option. It's no skin off their nose.
Right.
It's on him at that point. It's like, do you want this stability of $27.5 or $28 million a year, whatever the Niners come up to, or do you want to play out this fifth-year option? Yeah, and if you put up Justin Jefferson numbers, then cool. Come back to the table and we'll talk. But I don't think that's going to happen. So they're not going to trade him. Because a 2025 draft pick doesn't, again, never say never, but a 2025 draft pick doesn't help them this year at all.
Yeah, and it's very rare that you do a player for player draft or player for player trade.
Especially one where you're going to get value for Brandon Aiyuk. Right.
An emerging receiver in his prime. And I do think, I do think a big part of this is there's been so much talk over the last decade about the running back position being devalued because it's so easy to find running backs. Mm-hmm. At some point, I do wonder if there are just so many good receivers in the league and so many good receivers coming into the league from college that if teams are just going to be like, why am I paying top tier for receivers when I can just do what the Chiefs did or do what the Packers did and trade Tyreek Hill and trade Devontae Adams and then still be really good? I don't think the 49ers are going to do that, but I think at some point the market might correct a little bit and teams might say maybe I'm better off getting a first and a third round pick for my, top of the market receiver and then drafting somebody who I have under control for at least 4 years who could be, 85% of what this top tier receiver is. And that's a risk. Obviously the draft is a roll of the dice.
Yeah.
while these receivers, are known commodities. But I do wonder if that's part of the 49ers calculus, on top of the fact that they already have Deebo Samuel under contract. They have George Kittle under contract. They have Christian McCaffrey under contract. They use a first-round pick on Ricky Pearsall. So I think a deal's going to get done.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't surprise me if at some point, like say 5 years from now, we're going to look back on 2024, 2025, 2026 and be like, man, remember when teams just kind of decided to stop paying receivers like they were quarterbacks? Because I do think there's a chance that happens.
Yeah, maybe. And honestly, if this is a different point of the 49ers timeline, like if Aiyuk and Debo got drafted in the same year or something, then I could see them parting with one of them. But it's just everything kind of lines up where they can pay Aiyuk as they're getting out from other contracts, and he has a rapport with your franchise quarterback that you're about to give $60 million to. So, like, why would you not move forward with him? Like, right. I get what you're saying, but if that's going to be like your strategy moving forward, then you should have been drafting wide receivers in the first round like a long time ago. You should have been starting to stack up receivers who weren't Ronnie Bell and Danny Gray, with all due respect.
With all due respect.
With all due respect. No, I mean that. Like they're fine. They're fine. They're not, but they're not Brandon Aiyuk.
No, absolutely.
Even if Ronnie Bell and Danny Gray both peak as NFL players this year, they're not going to be Brandon Aiyuk.
No, absolutely. So I'm talking about first round picks.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is part of like, thank you, Brandon Aiyuk, for giving us some content in late June.
Salute.
Because the well is relatively dry. So we appreciate him giving us something new to talk about. But yeah, man, I think this is all part of the game. This is just what happens. And I don't blame Brandon Aiyuk at all. I don't blame the 49ers at all. I think this is just how these high-level negotiations go. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, I think the 49ers have enough equity with getting guys done that I believe that they're going to get this done. So that's
my mind has not changed one bit. Not a single iota.
Yeah. So I'm sorry to all the Pittsburgh Steelers fans, Steelers Nation that tunes into our podcast. It is
so funny. Every time anything happens with Brandon Aiyuk, I see 6 little Twitter spaces pop up about the Steelers trading for Brandon Aiyuk.
I saw Daniel Jeremiah tweet today. He was like, man, Steelers would be a perfect fit. I don't know if the 49ers are going to trade him, though. I don't know. It's like...
Hey, here's the thing: is when wide receivers are good as shit, they're a good fit everywhere.
Correct.
Find me the team that Brandon Aiyuk's a bad fit on. No, there's not one.
Who just has a really bad quarterback situation?
The Steelers. No, it's just I don't know, man. I'm flummoxed by where the Brandon Aiyuk discourse nationally went astray. But I can't think of an example, and I'm sure there is one. I'm sure I'll get tweeted one, and that's fine. But I can't think off the top of my head of an example of a player who was coming off an all-pro season, who was going into the final year of his contract, who got traded in June or July, for that matter. It doesn't make business sense. It doesn't make football sense. And the 49ers are a smart team. I think they generally do good business. So I am going to lean on that track record when assessing whether I think Brandon Aiyuk is going to get extended, and I will not be going off of Brandon Aiyuk's TikToks.
I think the national conversation, a lot of it, particularly when it comes to, talking about the 49ers trading him, goes back to the 49ers saying, oh, we'll listen to anybody. We'll listen on anybody. Like, they say whenever they are asked in a press conference, they always joke, Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch. Well, if, Kyle Shanahan will say, well, if John was offered a great pick, I'd expect to be traded. And, Lynch will always say, well, we'll listen on anybody. And then that extrapolated is, 49ers aren't opposed to trading Brandon Aiyuk. When in actuality, the only way they're trading Brandon Aiyuk is if they think they're ripping the team off whom they're trading with. Right? Like they'll trade Brandon. Yeah. You want to give us a top 10 pick in this wide receiver loaded draft so we can go get Roma Dunze? Sure. Yeah, we'll trade Brandon Aiyuk. We'll trade you Brandon Aiyuk for the 9th pick and a 3rd.
Right.
You know,
yeah.
Like,
and if somebody
we'll do that,
right,
right, and they would be dumb not to. But that's the thing. Just because they would be willing to rip a team off in a trade for a guy does not mean like, oh man, they can't wait to get rid of this guy. They're actively shopping him. They would take a bucket of sponges for Brandon Aiyuk this offseason. Like, no, that's not.
They are hopeful to just give him away. God, get this guy out of the building.
Yeah, because they said they'd listen on anybody. So clearly, like they got to get rid of this guy.
I love the idea. I love the idea that they were shopping Aiyuk during the draft, but only for a top 10 pick. And then after the draft, they were like, "Shit, we do not want this guy anymore." And then they were like ghosting him. They were ghosting him, not answering his calls. And then he finally, the straw broke the camel's back. And they picked up on Monday, June 17th. They were like, "Brandon, we don't want you. Go away. Stop calling us."
And then Brandon goes to TikTok. All right, it's time. Got to say some vague thing about them not wanting me on TikTok.
I'm assuming it was a significant other of some kind. So if it wasn't, forgive me. But let's assume that Brandon Aiyuk has a significant other who was there filming. And he's like, "Babe, film this. I'm going to call, let's see, Jaden Daniels. And I'm going to let him know what the 49ers said to me. But you film me talking to him. And then we'll post that on TikTok. And make it no, don't stand over there like it's secret. You can make it very clear. You can walk up to me. You can talk to me. And then we'll post that. Yeah. Let's do that. Like,
wait till Parag sees this. Oh man, it's like,
I love the idea that siren goes off in Niners headquarters. Shit, he posted on TikTok.
They're all running to the situation room. like it's the West Wing. John Lynch sits down like Leo McGarry.
It's the Trent Baalke situation room.
All right. What do we got?
We got TikTok. Oh boy.
What'd he say?
Did he unfollow us?
Oh, he still follows us? Okay.
No, that's good. Check his Instagram. All the pictures still up there? Okay, good.
Stan, I'm going to need Jeremy Fowler's Twitter feed right now, please.
Get it on the big screen. I don't give a damn where the USB cord is. Put it on the big screen.
All right, just read it aloud. Okay, we're going too far with this.
Yeah, we've belabored the bit. I'm done talking now.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say. Brandon Aiyuk, I still think, is going to sign an extension with the 49ers.
I'm guessing it's going to be something that averages. It's going to look like it averaged, like Amon-Ra St. Brown's. It's going to look like $30 million a year, but in actuality, it's going to be like you cut off some funny money at the end of the void years and whatnot, and it's going to be something like 26, 27 with the ability to make that money. And probably what's going to happen is if he continues on this trajectory, he'll play out the first 3 years of the 4 or 5 year deal, and then they'll go back to the table. And when the cap spikes, he'll negotiate another contract and he'll be with the Niners for like 8 years or 9 years. I think he's one of those guys. I would guess Deebo Samuel's probably not on the team next year. Like we've been sort of speculating or saying that the wind is blowing that direction, at least with Brandon Aiyuk's extension. And then, that's kind of how it goes. That's life in the NFL. But this stuff just happens and it's not worth overreacting to. But again, thank you, BA, for giving us some content in late June. We
big time
it.
Salute. Much appreciated. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcast. It is Candlestick Chronicles. We are also on YouTube at Candlestick Chronicles Podcast, or just search Candlestick Chronicles and you can find us on the YouTube. Subscribe there.
Hit buttons.
The little notification bell. Hit the thumbs up.
Comment. If you think we're stupid, shoot us a comment.
Don't comment if you think we're stupid. I cannot. My ego cannot.
Listen, I think the algorithm doesn't. I think the algorithm doesn't care what the comment is. I think it's just like, oh, there's a comment. We'll
Oh,
bump
hell
this
yeah.
up more
Okay,
people,
yeah,
so,
then fire away.
yeah, for sure.
All right.
So
Thanks for listening, guys. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you next time Brandon Aiyuk does something on social media.